we're obviously still one of the best, but that doesn't mean there's not problems here. What would you think about that?
Woodrow Wilson said it best that America needs to be the shining house on the hill. That America in like the new world, as a sense, like at one point we were leading the way in what many would consider like progressivism. America was one of the first countries that said we're going to offer K through 12 education free of charge. Well, not free of charge, but through taxes. Like you will, regardless of how much your parents make, you're going to have access to education. We're going to have workers' rights, Social Security. America was like leaders in the world for a lot of these things, and we've kind of taken the back seat to Europe and even many Asian nations, especially like South Korea, Japan, Singapore, and different things like that, where I think we have too much of a focus on not individual liberty in the sense of what people can do, but specifically on how much people are making. And that sounds really, really weird to say, like, oh, like how letting people have more money. However, in an economy, how much people have isn't always the same as how much value that is worth for what people have. Take for example back in the 1950s to 1960s, that was like considered like the golden age for, especially in the Midwest, manufacturing. We had the highest tax rates in the developed world. The United States was actually catching up to the Soviet Union at that time because surprisingly the U.S. was behind the Soviet Union in production capabilities and standards of living across the board. And it wasn't until a lot of investments in the Kennedy administration, the Johnson administration, and even the Eisenhower administration, from these taxes, we had many public works. I mean, the highway system is probably one of the best examples of public works in the country next to the New Deal. And that came from higher tax periods. So yeah, people didn't on paper have the same amount as money because of higher taxes, but the standard of living, the cost of goods, everything was much better because of that. I mean, we can even see that today with inflation. A lot of people are saying, oh, we need, like in Florida and California, they gave debit cards out for gas or different things. So people like, oh, well, this is going to help families pay for things. And in the short run, yeah, it will. But in all actuality, what is inflation? It's we don't have as much stuff, but there's a higher demand. So when you give people more money, you're just boosting that demand. So in the long run, you're going to have an issue with inflation. So if, as of today for the recording, we had the raise in Fed interest rates. So that's reducing the amount of money in the economy to kind of curb that. And the other way you do that is very paradoxically raising taxes to actually improve it so that people have more value but less money.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
it's crazy. We talked about this on a previous podcast. 80% of the cash in circulation has just been printed over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
It's nuts, bro. How do you think that, we come out of this inflation crisis? Do you think we'll take that route or?
Yeah, I mean, this is nothing the Federal Reserve hasn't seen, especially, it's not even as bad as inflationary rate is rough for the 70s, but we do not have stagflation. So a big thing is if we had stagflation, that would mean the economy is not doing good and we have inflation. Everything else considered besides inflation, things are pretty good. We have a relatively low unemployment rate. We have a high job growth rate. Manufacturing is doing good in the United States. The stock market was doing good before, I think, a correction that started in February. But even now, the market is kind of leveled out. Everything we're kind of seeing is we have inflation, which is hurting demand, but wages, for the first time in a while, have slightly grown for Americans. We've had continued job growth. Even oil production in the United States has grown. It's been on the same track since the Trump administration through the Biden administration. We haven't really seen much stuff other than inflation growth, which do cause concern and isn't good. But that's not as bad as in the 70s when the economy was going down, we were producing less oil, and also inflation is going up.
You mentioned a couple of seconds ago how oil production in the United States is still on par with the Trump administration. I guess what I want to ask is, why do you think that particularly the right-wing media wants to keep talking about how Biden supposedly shut down oil production in the United States.
So the basis for that comes from Biden administration back in, I want to say, March or April, first 100 days of his presidency, banning new gas drillings on federal land. On paper, for progressives, that sounds really good, and for the right-wing media, that sounds really bad. Until you understand the fact that oil companies have enough already permits and stuff, pre-bought leases on federal land for gas drilling. And keep in mind, this is only public land. This isn't even considered private land. Mm-hmm. They have enough to keep drilling, keep the production levels the same for federal land and public land for the next 30 years. Already.
Wow.
They have no issue with that. The only issue came was when the Biden administration actually said, hey, we're going to look into, can you really have these leases? Mm-hmm. They really curbed that down after oil prices started to go up. Why I think the media really, specifically usually like right-wing media, focuses on it is, one, everyone can relate to a gas price. Majority of Americans drive, or they know someone who's driving and are relying on that. Mm-hmm. Second, gas prices and oil prices directly relate to how efficient an economy is running, because everything requires energy to make. Mm-hmm. So that can in turn raise prices eventually, layered down a supply chain. And third, it's worked before. Specifically in the Obama administration was when the kind of like the first time that Fox News and the different right-wing medias kind of tried this, was trying to say gas prices or anything like that, blame it on the administration or however you need, even if you can't really make a good argument for it. Just keep repeating it in the media. It's not even just Republicans in the right-wing media are guilty of this, or even just in the political sphere. This is just a kind of a marketing tactic that you really even see. A good example is even Coca-Cola, I will say. When's the last time you saw a ad of someone saying, of Coca-Cola advertising, saying specifically to drink Coke? Like,
to be honest, the only thing you could remotely, in my experience, is at the movies. But then again, that's not by Coke. It's a student film from a particular college.
But so when you see a Coca-Cola product,
it's the brand.
It's just people being happy. It's people smiling.
Yeah.
You're not actually selling people. No one's gonna buy it if I said, "Hey, buy Coca-Cola." Coke, sponsor Luke Paula.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah. But they want to associate a feeling or idea with something else. So in the terms of politics, right-wing media, what they're doing is they're saying high gas prices. Mm-hmm. They just want in your head to think high gas prices equal Biden or Democrats or Obama or whatever. The same way they did with critical race theory last year. Critical race theory, Obama, Democrats, Biden, Clinton, whatever. That's kind of just really, it's a marketing tactic at the end of the day. That's really all it is.